Hey everyone, welcome back to Poem Dose of 3. Thank you so much for being here. And today we're going to be talking about family planning and infertility, which is something that I haven't really thought about given that I've been, pursuing the medical field. But I came across an article and realized that it is something I should probably pay attention to. And actually, according to a survey published in the Journal of Women's Health, 1 in 4 female physicians who are trying to actively conceive struggle with infertility. And this is almost double the rate of the general public. So that I thought was, crazy. But additionally, research suggests that only 8% of physicians receive education on the risks of delaying pregnancy.
Also, the age when most women doctors first give birth is 32, compared with 27 for non-physicians, which was a study done in 2021. And the rate of infertility has increased over time. Before, it was 1 out of 8 women had infertility in the US, and now it's 1 out of 5 women have infertility in the US, and worldwide is 1 out of 6.
So also according to the CDC, in general, infertility is defined as not being able to conceive after 1 year or longer of unprotected sex. Because fertility in women is known to decline steadily with age, some providers evaluate and treat women aged 35 and older, or older, after 6 months of unprotected sex.
So, I think we should get into the episode and just talk about why we've chosen to talk about this and why it's so important.
Yeah, because I'm getting a little scared, and it's
Me
important.
too. Me too.
So let's talk about it.
Let's go.
Anyway, so
I brought this up because having a kid was really never something I thought about. It was never really on my mind. It just wasn't something I ever thought about. And basically pursuing this journey, it's been a really long journey. I've been on this, I don't know for how long. I've always knew I wanted to work as a doctor, and I don't know, children were never something I thought about. But now that I'm getting older and I'm actually getting there, like actually, applying to medical school, thinking about this has been something that I'm like, okay, when am I going to have a child? When should I, when would be the right time? And I think fertility was never something that was a part of my plan until I read this article, and I was like, dang, because fertility decreases, I think, in your 30s, right? I think the number was 35.
But basically as you age, it decreases, the amount of eggs that's released monthly,
right?
It decreases.
Yeah, so I think the older you get, the harder it is to get pregnant. And so I'm getting older. I'm 29, about to be 30, and I was like, okay, now I'm starting school, and now my fertility is declining, so I can't have a baby now, but I can have a baby later. But I'm like, fertility was never something I thought about, and so I think this is something that we should talk about and kind of bring to light, because I know I'm not the only one who is thinking about this. And if you're not thinking about this is definitely something you should be thinking about, especially if you're pursuing something as rigorous and time consuming as working in the medical field.
Yeah, and then also aside from the medical field, in general, I feel like women, we're not in a sense, within our families, we're not in a sense taught about just infertility or fertility health in general. I remember listening to a podcast, and it's Cocktails, and the podcast host had a guest where she's a Black woman. She worked at a fertility clinic, and one thing that she said that she noticed was that majority of white women, they would bring their 18-year-old daughters into the clinic to get their fertility check, their fertility reserve check, to see how many eggs that they're producing monthly. So, and then that was a way for them to plan. It's is my daughter producing enough eggs monthly? And for me, that was never a thought within my family or even my mom.
It was the opposite. It was don't get pregnant.
Exactly. The last week's episode, don't get pregnant. And then the only reason why we went to see a doctor or anything was for a physical. Right. And the physical do not consider your fertility health. Mm-hmm. And now I'm 31 years old. I have a few days, maybe 15 days from now, I'll be 31. But I'm 31, do not have kids. I don't know my fertility health. I'm not even in a relationship. So my heart is beating a little bit fast, because I do really want kids. But then I know that the older I get, the more hard it is for the most part, to conceive.
Yeah.
And then again, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I've always been producing enough eggs monthly.
Honestly, that you bring up a good point, because like how you said that they took them in to go get, their ovary reserve taken a look at. I think that's something that should be considered part of women's health. Like, it should be a standard.
You would think,
it should be a standard, because I mean, I hear about so many women on social media, like, people are starting to be open about it. Like, I'm having fertility issues, and I think a lot of people are being more open about it. And because people are being more open about it, I'm seeing it's actually a bigger issue than I thought, to be honest.
Exactly.
That's why I made that comment last week about, when we were talking about the sex education, how a misconception that I thought was it's not as easy to get pregnant as they say, because I'm realizing a lot of people are having these issues, and I think that it should be a standard, and it should be something we do. What you're right, whether we're in the medical field or not, because it's our health.
Women, yeah,
it's our health.
Exactly. And it's sad that women don't realize that they cannot produce or conceive until they try.
Exactly.
It's like you said, if this was part of regular checkups, when you go get a physical, then we know. It's like, dang, Linda, maybe I should have been focused on my fertility health, or just knowing when I was 25. And I'm just praying now. I'm praying that, everything is okay, because I haven't actually tried. But when I do try, like, I don't want to have problems. And many women do.
No, you're right. And I think I was reading an article about a physician who was talking about how, she was delaying having a baby because she had medical school. She had residency. She had fellowship. She had all these other things that were in line. And to her, she was like, I never thought fertility was going to be an issue. So that's why I delayed it. And I didn't care. Now I am left childless.
Yeah.
And it's something that I regret. And I wish I wouldn't have done. And I wish I would have, had, I think more information about. So she would have been able to, be proactive about, her not being able to have a baby, her steps that she could have taken. Whether that's, gosh, there's so many things you can do, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus, I also think, okay, let's say you do get into, let's say you find out early, you're not fertile. Also, the procedures that are there to be done, they're so expensive.
Yeah, so you can plan for them financially.
It's kind of like, okay, if I start at 18, let's say I go to the fertility clinic, and then they tell me, you know what, your fertility is low, we need to start working on it. I'm like, okay, now that I don't have kids, and when I was 18, I had a job. So I'm gonna start saving, so I can plan for my family. But now, let's say in my case, I'm about to be 30. I don't have a job. I'm focused in school. Let's say I try to have another kid. Well, where am I going to get the money from? Because I'm not working, because I'm focused in school. So now it's a lot of things that get on my, in my personal way. Because now I have, and this is a discussion that I was having with my partner, do we have another kid? Do we don't have another kid? Do I have the time to have another kid? Because just having a kid is just popping the kid and that's it. No. You as a woman need to heal, and you also need to take care of the baby at the beginnings, because they depend on you. Breastfeeding. And, they just depend on you.
And that was another reason, literally another reason why women were delaying having babies, was because they didn't have the support. They didn't have that support. Everything lies on the women, breastfeeding, childcare.
Everything.
I mean, everything.
Childcare is crazy expensive. It is really, really expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive. And then also, you have, for me, when I became a mom and I started school, I was having a really hard time finding daycare, because I needed a daycare that would keep Thiago until 5, because I have schoolwork that I need to get done. And, when you're with your kid, you kind of don't have time for schoolwork. Yeah. Because they just want all that attention on them, which it's understandable, because they're kids and I'm his mom. Yeah. So, but finding that daycare that hold those hours, it was very difficult. And then also find one that was within my budget, it was difficult, because I'm already not working, and we have, other expenses to think about.
I can only imagine, because even though I don't have kids right now, I honestly do not feel like I'm ready to have kids. y'all don't make it look fun.
As y'all can hear the kids in the background.
Or hopefully y'all can't hear the kids, my neighbor kids screaming in the background. But it does not look fun. And
It's hardcore. It's hardcore.
It looks like it's hardcore. And it's like, dang, I'm already 31, don't have kids, and right at this moment, right now,
Right.
I don't feel like I want to have kids. I would love to have kids, when I'm like 35.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When fertility declines.
Yeah. And they said, like, when you're 35, that's considered
Geriatric.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
Pregnancy. Sorry, I always mess up that word. But I was like, dang, the word itself sounds
Make
just
it
like
sound
you just
old.
like
Yeah.
super old.
Like,
Yeah.
Everything. And to me, 35 isn't old.
Mm-mm.
But I know the older you get, the more like your eggs health, it's not as it's not as
I think you
healthy in a sense.
You have a
Mm-hmm.
decline in reserve,
Mhm.
and then you also the eggs that you have aren't as healthy as
It's
well.
not-
Mm-mm.
yeah.
No.
That's rough.
Yeah, and then within my family, just looking at my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, I'm like, ooh, God, please pray. I'm my eggs okay.
And-
so it's kind of scary.
And in a way, this makes me sad too, because it's like, look at everything a woman has to deal with. Okay, now I have to deal with, like, I have to think about my future. Like, do I want kids? Is this something I'm gonna be okay with in the future, not having kids? Or am I gonna struggle to balance it all? Like, my kids, my career. Because a lot of times I'm like, from what I was reading, like, women do not have the support that they need. Like, I don't know, I was reading, and I don't know if you know, Kathy, since you're a mother, but like, how much paid leave you get, or maternal, what's it called?
Maternity leave.
Thank you. Maternity leave. Like, how much is,
So-
how long is that? Do you get paid for that? Is it even good pay?
Okay. So basically, if you want to at least be with your kid for 3 months, only 3 months, you have to start your maternity leave right when you're 9 months, when you're about to pop. Because if you start before, then you're gonna be running out of that maternity leave.
Right.
So it's very short, and they don't pay you your full paycheck. They pay you only a percentage. I don't remember the percentage, but they don't pay you your full paycheck.
Which is crazy, because it's like, okay, now I have an extra mouth to feed, so you're telling me you're gonna give me less money, but it's like, then they complain about, oh, we don't our fertility rates are gonna go down, and it's gonna affect our economy, and all this and that. But it's like, well, we're not left with much of an option here.
Mhm.
We either have to give up our career so that we can stay home, or we have to make decisions where we have to take on less projects or less work commitment, so that we are able to balance this correctly, or we're going to try to take on everything and our mental health is going to decline.
And I think that's an issue that I'm having right now, because as you guys know, I already have a kid, but I'm like, I have been questioning it, like, do I want another kid? But then if I want another kid, with Tiago, I had the privilege to be with him at home the whole first year of his life and just pay attention to him, and it was just all about like me and him, and I loved it because we bonded. But then now with the second kid, I know I'm not gonna have that luxury
Right.
because I'm still in school, and if I wait until I graduated and I'm done, and then I have a kid, and then now I'm off like school and off the grid basically for a year because I'm raising another kid, then is that going to affect my chances of getting a job? Because now they're gonna be like, so what have you been doing for a year? And then when you tell them I'm a mom, like, okay, so what have
are
you
you
been
gonna
doing
do with your kid?
Yeah. So then I have to think about, okay, either do I do it while I'm in school, but then while I'm at school, then I'm gonna have 2 kids, I'm gonna have a baby, I don't have to focus in school. So it's like, it's a lot of things that I have in my mind. And then I'm like, okay, or maybe do I just want to have 1 kid and I just want to cut my tubes, because I do not want a surprise. Because it's hard because it's a lot of planning to do.
It's a lot that goes behind it. Like, from different people, I hear that there's never a right time to have kids. For me, I just want at least the basics down, in the sense that I want to have like a stable job and
a man.
I want a husband. But it's so complicated. Like Kathy was saying, it's so many factors when you're a working woman. Like, it's so many factors that go behind just having a kid, because a lot of the time the kid or the child depends on the mother in a sense. So it's like, if I have a kid, will like my job be accepting and lenient when my child is sick? And I feel like jobs look at that, especially when you're in healthcare. And I think it was an article that we were reading about even women in medicine. A lot of the times they have to, which isn't fair, but they have to think about, oh, what specialty do I specialize in that will allow me to be a mom and work as a doctor at the same time?
You don't understand how much I heard that the female physicians were choosing the specialty based off of their family.
Yeah.
Like their family planning. And to me, that's kind of sad, because it's like, okay, yeah, you're passionate about being a physician, but you're passionate about being a physician in a certain area because that's what speaks to you. But now you can't do that because you don't have maybe the support that you need to be able to make the decision to work in a career that you're super passionate about.
And it's unfair and like unequal in a sense. Men do not even have to think or consider that. They can just choose whatever career they want and go down their path, because they're not the ones that have to carry the baby. They're not the ones, in a sense. Yes, they do help, like good fathers, they do help at home, but even then the mother is the one that does majority of the work. Well, what I've seen, the mother does majority of the work.
And even think about it too. It's like, okay, when they carry the baby, you think they feel good. You think they have the energy. You think you don't think that they have, like sickness. You know how they have morning sickness, and some people get super sick. I don't know what it's called. It's called gravitas something, but you know what I'm talking about, right? That condition where like they're sick throughout the whole pregnancy. Some have to go on bed rest. Like that's stuff that you can't really plan for.
So it's honestly making me very anxious. As Jasmine, like we said in the beginning of this episode, I didn't even have a thought of this. Like I didn't realize how important your fertility health is until I was like, oh dang, Linda, you're basically 31 years old. You don't have kids. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking about it either until until now that medical school seems so close. So close.
And can you break down a little bit about medical school? Because that's the reason why the study that you're looking at, the women in medicine who have a hard time in a sense conceiving, and why they're later, they're a little older when they have children, because medical school is not just 4 years, 4 or 5 years and you go. Like it's a whole process.
So you have medical school, which is 4 years, but even to get into medical school, like it takes, like the whole application process takes anywhere, a year plus.
If you're lucky,
depending if you don't have to reapply. And that was one thing I was like, like obviously, I like to think about everything, and I was like, okay, Jasmine, you're almost 30. I was like, your fertility is gonna decline. I was like, let's say you don't get in this year, what do you do? When are you gonna have your baby? If you're gonna have a baby. And I was reading on Reddit, and it was like, oh, like you said, there's never a time to really plan for a baby. You just do it. But yes, because there's 4 years of residency, 4 years of medical school, then after that you have residency. And residency, I think it depends on your specialty. So it can go anywhere from 2 years plus. And then you have fellowship as well. And then it just depends too, like if you're going into surgery, that could be even more years. Crazy. So it's like,
and the hours that they would give the new doctors is, I know someone who is a surgeon, and literally he's on call 24/7. And it's like, as a woman, and you're a mother, that's very challenging. You're on call 24/7. Like you literally, in a sense, need a stay-at-home dad or a really, really good nanny, or very like a strong support system in family.
So yeah, I was actually watching, I know you guys know her, Daisy Sanchez. And she actually, I think, is on a rotation right now where she was doing like 24-hour shifts. So they called her, she had just left a shift, went to the gym, and was planning on going home, but they called her back.
And she has a daughter. I think
she has a daughter,
like about 5 or 6.
So she has a daughter, and they were like, "How do you do it? How do you do it?" She has a weekend nanny, a weekday nanny, and then obviously the help of her husband or her fiance. And so it's like, yeah, you have to have a literally a whole team behind you to be able to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Imagine being a single mom having to figure that out.
Oh,
exactly.
I couldn't. It's a lot of work. And then that's another thing that I was also thinking in my case for looking for jobs, I'm like, okay, I want a day shift, but from what time to what time?
Yeah.
Do I want to work in a clinic? Do I want to work night shifts? Because now, like, what moms that are listening to me, I know you guys could relate that you get that mom guilt. Like,
I hear that a lot.
I hear it a lot too.
It's not even like it's hard because even though you don't try to be like hard on yourself, you're still like I don't know, like unintentionally you're hard on yourself. So like for example, even in clinicals, I had the night shift clinicals, and I'm the one who put Tiago to bed because I'm like, at least I want to be with him for one part of the day, and if it's bedtime, then I'll take that. And me being away in clinicals for that part, the first night I was like on lunch and I was like, I almost cried.
Aww.
Because it's hard.
It's hard, and it makes sense because you're a first time mom. He's a baby, and then again you're missing out on a lot of milestones. That'd be hard as a mother. You carried that little monster for 9 months, and then like you're not even able to experience his milestones.
Right, and then that's what I'm afraid of, like having another kid. I'm like, because I know
it'll be even worse.
It's gonna be worse.
Yeah.
Because now I have 2 kids, and now I'm trying to find a new job. And then now when they interview me, I know they're going to ask me, do you have kids? Because I know in some jobs they do. They ask you, do you have kids?
And obviously they're not supposed to discriminate, but
they do.
I was reading on Reddit, and they were like, obviously they're not supposed to discriminate, but you know they do. You know,
they're
that's
asking for a reason.
You know, that's something they're going to take into account when they want to find a to fill that position. And unfortunately, we are discriminated for, you know, having a child.
And it makes sense the reason why they ask because they're running a business, so they of course want someone who's not, in a sense, not a parent, someone that they can call on 24/7, that's not calling off because their child is sick, that's not calling off because their child has a play or something,
or
so that's
parent conference.
That's
always the one.
But literally this is my thought process. Like, okay, even if like they're thinking of all that, like, how do you think you got here? I'm sorry, but like, how do you think you got here?
Sacrifices of their parents.
Did your mom ever go to your field trip? You know, like things like that. Like they had to do that stuff to be present parents. And as they should be, you know. I think it's a cycle, you know.
It's really a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
But then I also find it crazy that we have to think about this until now. Until we're 30.
In our 30s.
When this should have been talked about to us like when we're like 18, and like, you know, that way we could just at least make the decision for ourselves, like, you know what, I do not want to be a mom, and I don't care about my fertility, you know.
That makes sense, but it's a lot of times is because our families are working families, so they're not thinking of your fertility. They're thinking about how to put food on the table and everything. So that's not going to be, in a sense, that's the last thing. They probably looking at you like, you don't need to worry about kids, you need to worry about getting your degree so you can get a well-paying job. So that's more so the topic of discussion. And that's the reason why we're here.
It's survival. No, you're right. Our parents were focused on making sure we got a good education, making sure we had a roof over our head, making sure we were getting fed. But now I think it's up to us to really help educate others and help them, you know, realize that this is not something that is not going to affect you. It is going to affect you. It's affecting me. It's going to affect Linda. This girl already has a baby, so.
Exactly. And in a sense that, and also to add on to that, always breaking the cycles. We've come further education-wise than our parents did. So they knew what they knew. You know, they provided us what they knew.
What they could,
exactly. And for us, it's like we know better. Like we're healthcare majors, so we know a lot in the sense that the general public that basically don't know about. So we're able to, when we have children, like, oh, maybe I should take my kid in to get her fertility reserves checked because I know how important, like, though my child is not
ready now,
but in the future we should be able to. That's the whole thing. Just because we're women don't necessarily mean we're, like I said earlier, producing enough eggs monthly.
And like I said, that's something I never thought about. I never thought about like that. Like I told you, having a kid was never on my mind. I always said I'm going to be an old mom. Didn't even think about fertility. Even saying I'm going to be an old mom because that wasn't something I thought about. But reading article and all that really did wake me up
Yeah.
a little bit.
And then when women get to the point where they have kids and they're infertile, there's a whole another deep dive in procedures and just stuff they have to consider, like IVF.
Yes.
Freezing
your eggs.
IUI.
Don't know that one, but
it's right there.
No, I know. I don't know. Like, I don't know about that.
Oh,
one.
okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I was like, read it off to us.
Yeah, so you have options. Are they accessible to everybody? I would say probably not, because they're super expensive. And later we'll go about ways that you may be able to access them, because I went down a rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can definitely freeze your eggs, since you're born with the eggs that you're born with, all of them you're going to have. And then as you get older, you have less and less. So definitely, I think looking into freezing your eggs is a really good option. It's just really expensive. It's about $15,000 to $20,000 per round, so that's a nice price.
And then also know that just because when your doctors do freeze your eggs, usually doctors try to abstract about 15 to 20 eggs each cycle, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those are our healthy eggs. Mm-hmm. It's like, dang, now I'm spending all this money and sacrificing 15 to 20K just for that one cycle, and hoping and praying that one cycle is
going to be enough. And keep in mind too, like the 15 to 20,000, that I believe is just to extract them. Like, you still have to store them, and I know they can store them for about 50 years, and you have to pay for the storage fee as well. So that's another fee you have to take into account, which is a lot.
I have a friend, I don't think she works there anymore, but she worked at a fertility clinic, or not even a clinic, somewhere that they freeze the eggs and house the eggs for you. I was like, oh, I'm interested in this. How much does this cost? She told me the price. I was like,
never mind.
Never mind.
Maybe not.
I gotta go find me a sugar daddy first, right, Linda?
No comment. But no, it's ridiculously expensive, and it's basically, in a sense, it's a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a privilege.
Yeah.
And it's not even guaranteed that at the end of the day you're gonna have a baby, because you could have frozen eggs, and what happening, none of them work.
Yeah.
There goes your 15-20K plus the expenses.
Stop! That hurt my heart. That would be so sad.
Like, but there has been cases that this occurs.
Yeah, it happens.
Mm-hmm. So it's like IVF. They go through so much, and then it's also not guaranteed that they're gonna end up with a pregnancy.
Yes. And with IVF,
IVF stands for
in vitro fertilization. So basically, they take your egg and they inseminate it with the sperm, and then they put it back into your uterus. Mm-hmm. They implant it, and hopefully you have a baby.
And that one's very expensive.
Super.
The one underneath that is IUI, which is intrauterine
insemination.
What is it?
Insemination.
Yeah, insemination. That one's a little less pricey, but even then, that's pricey.
Oh, so with that one, they inject the sperm into your uterus. Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah.
And then with IVF, the process takes a whole 6 to 7 months. If you're planning to get pregnant in that round, I would say. But if you're just planning to freeze your eggs, it takes 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's it's a long process, and even then, the reason why it takes so long is because you need to prepare your body before you begin IVF. Like, you have to start taking contraceptives, like pills, in order to get your eggs ready and just healthy. And also you have to stop drinking and smoking. You have to
change your lifestyle.
Yes, if you really want.
And that's what I also read, is that when you're trying to conceive, there's a process that no one a process. Just in general, say if you are fertile, when you're trying to conceive, you should change your lifestyle, in the sense that you shouldn't be drinking, you shouldn't be smoking, healthy eating, active lifestyle, because even then that'll affect how you when you
chances of conceiving.
Yes, and then how your egg, or the health of the baby and stuff. So it's a process to everything. And like we said, it's so expensive, and in the US it's very expensive. I know someone who couldn't get pregnant naturally, so she had to go through the IVF route. And there's no way. It's so expensive here. She had to go to another country to do IVF.
I was reading that that's an option. you know, it's super expensive because a lot of times of IVF, I think it was IVF, but basically like your first round, you may not have a baby. You may have to go through a few rounds.
A lot of times.
I think I was reading, and they, you know, I think it was what 6 to 14,000, I think for an IVF round, right? They recommend 3 rounds, and that's just recommendation. Like you may have to go more. I mean, a lot of people will pay like, I don't know, upwards to $100,000 to have a baby, not including, let's say you have that baby, now you have to pay for the baby itself because babies are not cheap.
It's sad. It's unfair.
So a lot of times, like you said, people had to go out of the country. They did that. I saw people were doing like clinical trials. So they had to like sign up for clinical trials. And I think I was reading, and let's say if you were in the category that you didn't get like inseminated, or you didn't, you know, get the baby, because you know how they have to do a one that they know and one that they don't. I forgot what it's called. Sorry.
I know.
I'm losing my science blind
study and
So for some reason I'm losing my terminology.
I know what you mean. I'm the same way. I was like,
okay, so you guys know what I mean. But basically, they'll have like 2 groups, and one of them's actually gonna have a baby, and one of them isn't. Placebo. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
And so I think they end up actually, even if you're in the round that doesn't have the baby, I think you still get help with that as well, because you were in the clinical trial. And then you could also do like, I know some people look for jobs that specifically have fertility benefits. And so that was a really good route. Like I was reading, and some people will get like a part-time job that they don't need, but they only have it because they offer fertility benefits.
That's like smart. I know in Google, they offer their employees to like freeze their eggs, and they'll pay for it because they need them to be focused on their job. And then they take care of the fertility part for the woman. Right. I know that for a fact.
That's really nice.
We are amazing.
Stop right there and stay tuned for part 2 next week.
Quick disclaimer. We are a podcast of a group of 3 friends that share our journey through school, the healthcare system, and life. Our discussions are personal reflections and not intended for diagnostic purposes.
Thanks for listening to this episode of PD3 with your hosts Linda, Jasmine, and Kathy. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe at a potent dose of 3 so that you never miss an episode and your weekly dose.